First, we want to just say thank you. Thank you to you all for being here today, to everybody who's tuning in virtually, for being engaged in this process year in and year out. And we also want to thank all of the partners and the sponsors who made it possible. Of course, we'll hear from them later on, again, as mentioned by Nicola. But we want to thank ACLU of Georgia. Everybody clap it up for ACLU of Georgia. That's right. We also want to thank the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. Woo! We want to thank the Atlanta Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Camellia Rose Chapter of the Lynx that was incorporated with the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated Chapter, so clap it up again. And of course, the Eta Lambda Chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Woo! And so yes, and my name is Hannah Joy Gebrselassie, co-founder of Protect the Vote Georgia and the executive director. So we're also proud to partner up along with Black Voters Matter. So we're going to go ahead and get this program started. Everyone take notes, make sure you're sharing the link with your friends, and make sure to get out and vote. Tell 5 friends you know, because you're
Always sharing Doug's mic. I think the last time it was the same thing. So everyone, my name is Nicola Hines. I am the president for the League of Women Voters, Atlanta Fulton County. My role tonight is to go over the rules. Invitation and or appearance do not constitute endorsement by the League of Women Voters or any of the other sponsoring organizations. We are all sponsors of 501c nonpartisan organizations. The main criteria for the forum participation is that the candidate must have qualified during the qualifying period established by state law. All write-in candidates were not included in the original runoff, and these are runoff candidates, so that means that each candidate presented here did not meet the minimum requirement of over 50%. Voters, Atlanta Fulton County. Candidate speaking order will be determined by the moderator in an unbiased manner. Audio and visual media platforms. Any other use of the materials requires express written approval from League of Women Voters, Atlanta Fulton County, or any sponsoring organization. No campaign banner observed. We have our timekeeper in the front. You guys remember Karen? So Karen's up front. She's got a horn and everything, so remember that.
Oh, wow.
Each candidate will have a 1-minute opening and a 1-minute closing statement. There will be several questions that will range from 2 minutes, 1 minute, and 30 seconds. The moderator will let you know with notice. Because this is a forum and not a debate, rebuttals by candidates are not permitted. So I'm going to say that again so everyone does understand that. This is a forum, enforce the ground rules and format agreed upon by the candidates. So prior to this, all candidates did receive the rules. The moderator may restate the question if asked, and the moderator may interrupt the candidate if he or she believes the candidate are straying from distance or attacks from other candidates, other administration, or elected political parties. Candidates will have no opportunity to rebuttal following the closing statements. So once we do the closing statements, that will be the end of the Q&A. Our moderator for tonight. A longtime Atlanta resident, Karyn is well known in the local governors for the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. Karyn is the recipient of 6 Southeast Emmy Awards, 2 awards from the Atlanta Association of Black Journalists, and a Salute to Excellence Award from the National Association of Black Journalists. Karyn is a member of the Magnolia chapter of the Lynx Incorporated. Work and community contribution. She has constantly been named one of Atlanta's 100 Women of Influence by the Atlanta Business League and features as a powerhouse in Who's Who in Black Atlanta. Karyn is proud of her work. For our moderator tonight, Ms. Karyn Greer.
See, that's why I try and go faster, because I always hate to hear that part. I'm like, who is she talking about? Thank you so much. Great to be here. We are going to get started. This traffic is always horrible, and we're hearing sirens outside. So we're going to talk about Atlanta and crime as well as we get into this, a nice discussion. But let's start with our 2-minute questions. 2 minutes is what the time you will have for this. And our first question is about mistrust and skepticism. And actually, I'm going to give you your opening statements. How about that? Would you like to talk a little bit about why we're here and what this is all about? Mm-hmm. All right. So let us begin with our incumbent, Natalie Archibald.
Well, Thank you very much, Ms. Greer. And thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. My name is Nadalyn Archibong, and I am a 5-term member of the Atlanta City Council. I have represented Council District 5 for 20 years. I am a product of the Atlanta Public Schools. I always say I'm a Spell House baby. My mom and dad met at Spelman Morehouse and decided to raise their family here. And so Atlanta is home. I am the proud mom. My daughter is here. She's a product of APS as well, now a practicing attorney. And so we have deep roots in Atlanta, and I care deeply about our city, and that is why I'm offering myself for this highest office, second highest office in the city. I'm a small business owner. My law office is in the council district that I serve in, and I have a vast amount of experience legislatively speaking, and I am ready to serve a council and a body that I've been a member of for 20 years, and I ask you to listen to the questions tonight, and I invite you to support my candidacy. Thank you.
And I say incumbent because of your time on the Atlanta City Council, but not for City Council President, so let me correct that right now. Doug Shipman.
Well, good evening. I am Doug Shipman, and let me just start by saying it's Veterans Day. I don't know if anyone is in the audience a veteran, but a shout out to everyone who has served our country in all kinds of ways. My Atlanta journey has been extraordinary. I'm the son of a preacher and a school teacher. I came to Atlanta to go to college, and I fell in love with its history and with all the things that Atlanta represents. And a few years ago, I got the opportunity to do a 10-week project that turned into 10 years of leading the building of the National Center for Civil and Human Rights just down the road. And the ability to really understand Atlanta's legacy, but also bring it to generations that didn't live through it. And then subsequently, I was asked to lead the Woodruff Arts Center, the third largest art center in the country, to make it look more like Atlanta and to make it work better. And as I think about our city at this moment, I've knocked on 4,000 doors during this campaign. People are worried about our future. They're worried about where we're headed. And I am excited to offer myself as City Council President because I think that we need a direction that includes every single person who lives in Atlanta. Thanks.
All right, thank you both. Let us go on now to our 2-minute questions. And Doug, I will start this one with you. Mistrust, skepticism definitely have plagued city government for quite some time now. How are you going to build the morale, help people feel a lot more comfortable in the city of Atlanta, trust leadership, and what specific policies will you put in place to improve the transparency of the city government here?
So I think there is a lot of skepticism right now about how the city is working. Folks quoted to me over this campaign how long their yard trimmings have been sitting outside, whether or not their trash has been picked up. So I think the first thing the City Council President has to do is to provide transparency and good information to make sure that people understand exactly what is and what is not working. The second is, I think you have to spend more time outside of City Hall than you do inside City Hall. I think folks right now want to see their elected officials. They want to talk to them. Sometimes they want to yell at them, and that's okay, because if you allow folks the chance to actually share their frustrations, then you can actually get to the work. And so I think the second is to really spend a lot of time outside of City Hall. And then third, I think we have to really understand that, one, the stronger our ethics rules, the more that there actually is trust in government. And two, I've had former City Council presidents say that I should think about this role as explainer-in-chief. Someone who is constantly explaining what's happening, why it's happening, and then building bridges out to communities. And so I think that means we have to do things like taking Open Checkbook and actually putting analytical tools on top of it. So it's not just a bunch of data, but that you can actually do an analysis and understand what's happening. I think we need to make sure that we have citizen participation that represents all of Atlanta. A lot of people over the course of this campaign have said it's often the same people appointed to the citizen boards or appointed to the committees. We need to make sure that we're representing renters, not just owners. We need to make sure we're representing our AAPI communities, that we're representing our LGBT communities, that we're representing our Latino communities. So I think part of it is policy, but I think part of it is every day waking up saying, how do we build greater affiliation, and how do we make sure that people can see what's happening and finally can be responsive? 311 is a great tool, but if you have to leave a voicemail and if the app's not working, then it builds an enormous amount of distrust. And so I also think it's making sure that we're executing what we're offering extremely well.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's undeniable that there is a cloud over our city. Part of it, I would say, is some past administrations and some things that have happened that have caused some distrust. But I would think for right now, the biggest obstacle in terms of trust is promises made have not always been kept. You know, we had the Renew Atlanta, we've had the T-SPLOS, these are just some funding opportunities, and when citizens look at, okay, we vote for a referendum, and we have a list of projects that are going to get completed, we need to complete those projects. We need to make sure that from Southwest Atlanta to Buckhead, from all across this city, that everybody knows that they are valued, and that when a government official says, we're going to serve you, that we serve everyone. You know, being elected 5 times doesn't come easy. It comes by building trust and accountability with your citizens and with those who have entrusted you to represent them. It means as mundane as when you get a phone call, you return that phone call. When you get an email, you respond to it. That when we look at the needs in this city, that we are as concerned about the lowest income community or the zip code that has the lowest performing school, that we are rushing to be accountable and to deliver services there. When citizens know in their home, in their community, that their government cares about them, they will begin to trust that government more. And that is why I'm offering myself, because I know that we can do better. COVID has hurt our sanitation department. It has hurt some delivery of other services, but we can and we will do better. We will have the opportunity to look at what we didn't do well, and we can do it better, and I'm committed to that. Keeping our word is the most important component to building trust. Thank you.
All right, our second question, now that we are down to the last 2 candidates in the runoff for mayor of Atlanta. Quite a few people would say that, you know we got a glimpse of the personalities of these 2 candidates. And over the last 8 to 12 years, there's not always been a great relationship between City Council President and the Mayor of Atlanta. So let's take a look and see how and what you would do to foster a better relationship than we've seen in the last few years with our mayor. And I'll start with you, Ms. Archibald.
Thank you very much. In fact, I've spoken to or met with both of them this week. They have been my colleagues, I think Andre for 12 years and Felicia Moore for the 20 years that I've been on council. So I know them, not socially, not when I stop by their office to ask for support for an initiative, but I know them as a colleague, and I respect them and they respect me. And so I do know that the opportunity now, we will have colleagues who've done hard work. They have both made a lot of progress on different initiatives, and they know the value of the council. And so I think having an elected official, a council member, who now will elevate to the office of mayor, but having these 2 who I know personally respect the council, that is going to be a game changer. It is going to be an opportunity for us to work together on policy directions for our city in a way that will be measurably different than it has ever been. For this opportunity to have 2 members of the council as our option for mayor means that for the council president, we have an open door opportunity for us to build that bridge of communication. The council is a co-equal branch of government. That means that we have a role to play that is important for you. We need to have a council that can go across the hall to the mayor's office and say, this is what the people have said that we need. And that mayor will then listen to the directives or the positions of our council, and will be respectful of that body in a way that I don't think we've ever seen, at least in the 20 years that I've been down there. And so I am excited about the possibilities now that we have with 2 seasoned council members who will now elevate. One of them will elevate to the office of mayor, but they will understand when I come across the hall as a council president on behalf of my colleagues that there will be an open door and respectful policy. And I'm excited about Atlanta moving forward now because there will be more of a partnership than a battle. Thank you. When
we were building the Center for Civil and Human Rights, it had $40 million in bond money from the city of Atlanta involved. It had millions of dollars in federal tax credits. The King Papers were obviously a part of it, and overall it was a high-profile project. That project started under Mayor Shirley Franklin, and it finished under Mayor Kasim Reed. And throughout that time, I had to find ways in which to work with them to make sure that they were updated, we had good data, they weren't surprised, that we had a good working relationship because both of them cared very deeply about the project. I think that those lessons are very applicable to this role. I also think that we have seen in the past that sometimes folks take out their disagreements on Twitter or go to a radio interview instead of walking across and having a conversation and trying to work it out as elected officials. You will not find me first on Twitter or on the radio doing an interview. I will try to have a very open and direct conversation based on information with the mayor, understanding what it is that they're trying to accomplish, and also representing the council, being a spokesperson for the council, saying this is where council members are coming from, and here's why. I think the other piece that's really important is that we have to define what success looks like. The next mayor, the next city council president have a number of very crucial priorities that are immediately here. Public safety, which I'm sure we'll talk about, Buckhead City, city services. I have found, because I've been in a CEO chair 3 times, I know what it's like to be in that chair. And one of the most important things is that everybody agrees on what success looks like so that we're working in the same direction. And so I will spend as much time defining where we're headed and working with the mayor to define that for everyone as exactly what we're going to implement. Because when you're aligned on the goals, you can have much better alignment on the policy and on the execution. And I think that's what we're going to need given so many things on the table.
Quick question, just to follow up with that. Do you think your not being a part of city council hinders or helps your relationship with that next person?
So I know both of them very well. I've worked with both of them in various capacities with the museum, with the Woodruff Art Center, on other civic engagements. So I think there's a personal relationship to build on. But I think people have said in this election that they want fresh leadership. I think there's a reason why I got the most votes in the general election, and I think they're looking for a fresh approach to some of our very intractable problems. And I think that whoever is elected mayor also realizes that there have to be new approaches to what we're dealing with.
And quickly, Ms. Archibong, you mentioned you know them both, have worked with them both. Do you think that hurts or helps your relationship with who would be the next mayor? You mentioned you know them well.
I think it definitely helps. We need to have seasoned, experienced people, and when you look at who was selected to be in the runoff for mayor, they chose experience. They didn't choose someone new. They didn't choose someone with a great idea. They chose experience. And so I also have experience, and that is experience that can be mutually beneficial to the city as well as independently to the mayor, because they will know that I understand not only the people, understand the bureaucracy, and I am ready to help us accomplish all the things that are needed for our city to be as great as possible.
All right, let's talk about that city council president job. It is the number 2 job for the city of Atlanta, right behind the mayor. God forbid something happened to the mayor, one of you would be the mayor pro tem, or you would be the mayor temporarily in that position. Let's see what you think. You ready? And what would you tell voters about you perhaps being in that spot? Let's start with you, Mr. Shipman.
So heaven forbid that were to happen. But I would draw on my experience of having led organizations 3 times as the chief executive. The Woodruff Art Center is a $100 million organization on an annual basis. It employs 400 full-time people. It employs 600 part-time people, 1,000 employees, 1 million people visit every year. We have to do with security, we have to do with HR, we have to do with maintenance, we have to do with operations, there's a lot of budgets involved, et cetera. I think that experience I would pull on in order to make sure to ask the right questions, because I think anybody who is in the mayor's office is constantly trying to make sure that they're asking the right questions about how things are running. Do we have the right people? How are we actually going to run this city? And so I think that having served in those executive roles, I would draw on that experience, combined with I would also draw on the expertise of everybody who is in the city. And I think that anybody who has found themselves in that position in history, whether we look at presidents who have done it or others who have done it, they lean on the people around them. And I also think the third is being able to stabilize the situation, because it would be a very big disruption. And so understanding Atlanta, understanding the history of Atlanta, having worked across various neighborhoods and various communities to do big things, would also allow me to have the relationships to help stabilize the situation. And so I think that executive experience that I have would very much prepare me, heaven forbid, to play that role.
Ms. Archibald.
You know, for 20 years that I've been on council, I have voted on every personnel budget that has come before the council. I know the bureaucracy. I am honored to say that AFSCME, the biggest union that represents the employees of the city of Atlanta, has endorsed me. Not only do I know the employees, I also know the legislative branch. And so those who are elected to be council members, they will know me. And they will know that I know and I respect and I honor them. And then for the executive staff that will be there if, God forbid, some tragedy prevents the mayor to continue to serve, they will also know that I am experienced in dealing with the executive branch. And then most importantly, I know the public. To run and to campaign and to be convincing to voters 5 times. I have had to do the heavy lifting of talking to you. I don't have to go to parties, 7 months before an election to find out what you want. I have been hearing it consistently. I've been reading your emails. I have been meeting with you. So if you look at it as a 4-legged stool, I don't know if stools usually have 3 legs, but mine's going to have 4. We've got the employees who are needed to do our day-to-day activities. We've got the council who does the policy setting for the city. We've got the executive branch that carries it out. And then most importantly, we have the public. All 4 pieces of that are within my wheelhouse of experience, and it will be a foundation of trust and an opportunity to lead in a time of disaster and uncertainty in a way that someone who is brand new would not be able to have all of those 4 pieces. Thank you.
All right, let's talk about if you had an opportunity to create a different committee within the City Council, what would it be and why? Let's start with you, Ms. Archibald.
If I had an opportunity to, and I'm rephrasing the question because I'm thinking, if I had an opportunity to create a new committee, instead of creating a new committee, I might break up one committee. Community Development, Human Services has a lot that is under that particular committee. And I think I might break up the Human Services part from the community development part. When we look at the income inequality in this city, when we look at the housing affordability challenges that we face, that can be a separate committee all by itself. The human services part deals with the grants that the city has the opportunity to administer. And we have done, that is by a separate entity. It is not under the city, but it is a partnership with the city. And so Invest Atlanta, who is one of our partners now, has a large part of WorkSource Atlanta, and some of our grant funds that are administered need to be managed in a way that we are able to meet the expectations of the citizens and those who have given us those grants for us to carry out those extraordinary extra things that we need. Housing for those who are facing or who are suffering with AIDS, HOPWA. Money for the folks who are looking for employment or underemployed. Those are such important pieces of the puzzle of how we do better with income inequality that I think we need to have a separate committee dealing with those issues, dealing with them at the granular level so that we can do much, much better in the way of accountability, and then having our economic development and our housing affordability as a separate, very, very important and special focus of the committee. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Shipman.
The single biggest threat to our future that we are not addressing right now is sustainability. We know that the world is getting warmer, and we know that a place like Atlanta, at the very least, is going to deal with more frequent storms, more frequent flooding, and more frequent heat. And we've already seen these effects, not only on our city, but we'll remember, some of you may have had New Orleans refugees from the last hurricane staying with you for weeks or for months. So I believe that we need a committee that would actually be thinking about this issue both in the short and the long term, because this is the kind of issue that is going to take multiple ways in which we address it, from incentives to regulations to making sure that we deploy technology, to how we think about design, to how we think about utilities. And if it is spread across all of the committees, it will never get the kind of attention and the kind of policy innovation that it really needs. And so I think that is the single most important thing that we could do with a new committee. And I also think that it would really clarify and build an expertise with the public, because the public also doesn't have a place in which they really are getting information from our city consistently about what we're doing, what's not happening. One other example, our tree canopy is under enormous stress because of the storms and because of the flooding. We see trees being toppled more often than usual, and that's only going to continue. And so then you get into an issue like a tree ordinance, which you could just think about as a tree ordinance, but you really have to think about it on a much bigger level. And so I believe that that would be incredibly helpful and also would address a huge issue that just isn't getting the kind of policy attention that it needs to right now.
All right, thank you. All right, this next one's a pretty long one. Council member Amir Faroqi presented legislation to amend Part 16 of the zoning ordinance to present more affordable housing. Many citizens feel like that option is not affordable. This was voted on and voted against by 17 NPUs in Atlanta, but was approved by the Zoning Review Board. Will you support this legislation as council president? And if so, what does this mean for NPU's future input? We'll start with you.
Sure. So Amir Faroqi is a friend and has endorsed me, and I have told him very clearly I don't support his legislation. So one, I think that's a good example of being able to work across disagreements, which is what a council president should do. I think there are some elements of it that we should continue to work on. I think that parking requirements being an absolute minimum across the whole city probably doesn't make sense. I live in 4th Ward, you're near the Beltline. I think having very low to no parking minimums occasionally makes sense, but as a blanket policy, I don't think it makes sense. I think specifically having an overall policy that around every MARTA station, by right, you could build density is just too blunt of an instrument. Our neighborhoods are very, very distinct. I'm a bit of a policy geek. One night I took a map and I drew a half-mile radius around every MARTA station just to see how far it would reach around each of the MARTA stations. There are historic homes on the west side. There are historic homes on the east side. There are all kinds of neighborhoods up and down the north and south corridor that would be impacted. And so I think we need to spend more time thinking through what kind of density we want. I also think there's a missing piece here. The design plan for the city called on each of the neighborhoods to go through their own process to define how they wanted their neighborhoods to be. I think a key NPU role is actually to lead that process for each neighborhood so that the neighborhoods can say, this is the kind of density we want, this is the kind of workforce housing we need, this is why we need it. We skipped a step. We basically went straight to the policy without the process of going through each neighborhood, defining what it really needs for its own future. And so I would not support the legislation because I just don't think we're at the point yet where we've either built the consensus, nor do we have the right ideas in place to actually get where we need to go, which is to smartly manage our growth. We're growing, people want to move here, we want to welcome them, but we need to do it in a way that actually makes sense.
Thank you. This is an example of, and I'm going to get to the answer at the end, but this is an example of why we need a very strong council president. Amir Faroqi this is his first term, and he is chair of the zoning committee. It's his first time being a chair of a committee. One of the things that I intend to do as council president is make sure that the council members understand that just because the administration brought you a paper and asked you to introduce it, you have every right to say, no, it's not ready. I'm not going to introduce this. Oftentimes it is a courtesy, but when something of this magnitude, it's been a disruptor. It has caused consternation all across this city. One of the things that is important for the neighborhoods in Atlanta is to know that they are respected and they are valued, and that they have zoning standards that they are accustomed to. And if we're going to disrupt it, if we're going to change it, we don't do it from the top down, we do it from the bottom up. And as your next city council president, I'm going to make sure that every city committee chair on city council understands that they have a duty to be timely. They have the right to say, administration, not now. You know, we funded a zoning rewrite. I think $100,000 was put in place probably 8 years ago to do a complete comprehensive zoning rewrite. We don't need to play the game of Jenga with zoning. We don't pull out one thing and say, this is great, this makes sense, bring up beloved community out of context, and say, let's do this now. No, let's do things in a respectful, neighborhood-centric, timely way. This was not timely. So from what I've said, I think you can conclude how I feel about this legislation, but as the only person here who will be voting on this potentially at the end of the month, I will leave it at that. Thank you.
So let me be clear, though. So you would vote against it?
I am going to be deliberating and weighing it, but all the things that I've said give me pause and give me concern about it.
If you voted for it, what would that have to say for the MPUs? That's the other part of that question. So if you voted for it, what does that mean when the MPUs voted against?
Well, you know, the MPUs, and I hate to sound technical, all my team said, don't sound technical, but it is what it is. The MPUs are critically important. I'm so proud that Maynard Jackson, our first vice mayor, and by the way, I think a council president is like a vice mayor. It's that important. Please vote for council president. But the MPUs inform what we do. They don't dictate. But if we don't respect them, then why do we have them? So it's a partnership. So it's important that we respect what they say.
Okay. According to a recent U.S. Census American Community Survey, over 50% of Atlanta's population, as if many of you don't know this, are black. The poverty rate for blacks in Atlanta is 30.2% compared to 8.1% for whites. Further, median annual household income for black households in the city of Atlanta is $35,000, while it's 2.9 times higher, or $102,000, for white households. Statistics like these have led to Atlanta becoming recognized as the worst city in the nation for economic mobility and income inequality. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, in a recent briefing to Invest Atlanta, said closing the racial wealth gap should be the most important priority of our nation to maintain our world economic standing. Question here: how important is it to you as City Council President? What will you do to close that racial wealth gap for Atlanta citizens? Ms. Archibong.
I am proud to say that yesterday at our Finance Exec Committee, the city allocated $2 million for, it's going to be funded, going to be overseen by the Atlanta Urban League to give families that are at our lowest poverty level income of $500 a month for a set period of time. This is a beginning. It is a drop in the bucket, but we are taking that responsibility seriously. As Council President, I will convene a meeting inequality challenge that our city is facing. And we have got to come up with policy initiatives, and this is one, I know we're replicating this from other parts of the country, but it worked well in California. We're looking for it to be successful here, but we must do more to deal with child poverty. We must do more to deal with the homelessness crisis that we have. And so I am very excited about this initiative, but we must definitely do more. We have to strengthen our partnerships with the technical colleges and then fundamentally with APS. Not every child is going to go to college. Some are going to go directly to career. And we need to strengthen the ability of students at APS to go into career or to college. We also must help the parents. When I think about child poverty, I think about the child who is struggling to do well in school but is facing housing insecurity at home, who is hungry. We saw that during COVID, that there were many kids who went without food because school was not in session. We have got to bridge all those divides with strong partnerships and with an intentionality around what we do with our budget in a way to really make a difference. Thank you.
Mr. Shipman.
My wife is an emergency room physician at Grady Hospital. And every day, the impact of our income inequality walks into her emergency room. Whether it's unsheltered folks, or kids who have asthma, or folks who have diabetes, we are seeing those impacts. It is crucially important that we address this issue, and what we have been doing has not been working. We have been putting almost all of our economic incentives in a trickle-down kind of approach. We get a big corporation, we build a big project, we develop one part of town, and somehow it will create jobs for all parts of Atlanta and all parts of the income spectrum. And it hasn't. It's gotten down to your numbers, about 75% of the way, and 25% of folks in this city, almost all of whom are black and brown, are in poverty. So what do we do differently? Number one, we make sure our incentives are not just flowing top down, but they are actually going to neglected neighborhoods, to entrepreneurs who are wanting to build businesses in those neighborhoods. Two, we have to make sure our infrastructure in neglected neighborhoods is actually of quality. If you draw a map of poverty in this city and a map of where parks are not accessible within a 10-minute walk, you have the same map, because we haven't invested in sidewalks and lighting and infrastructure in neglected neighborhoods, which means those places aren't as economically viable. Number three, we have to get serious about early childhood care and education. Other cities has made affordability for 3-year-olds and 2-year-olds and 1-year-old a priority, not only because it helps the kids get ready to go to kindergarten, but because it gives the parents more economic options. And if COVID taught us anything, it was if you had the ability to have childcare, then you were probably safe as a household, and if you didn't, you weren't. And so to me, we have to make sure that early childhood education and community centers and summer options are available, because the more we're investing in the total life of our kids, the more chance we have of breaking that cycle.
Thank you. One of the big stories on all the newscasts yesterday was Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms and Fulton County officials and other partners holding a press conference on the establishment of a Center for Diversion and Services. We know what that is. That's going to provide alternatives for people in the county jail or the city detention center who suffer from some type of behavioral issues. What do you think, or why do you think it took the city so long, a city plagued with homelessness and issues with mental health problems, so long to come up with a center and a plan like this? And two, do you foresee any challenges with the use of the center when it comes to actually detaining those in need? We'll begin with you.
So I think it's a big cultural shift for cities to think about mental health issues, substance abuse issues, homelessness issues. It's much easier to criminalize those things than it is to actually serve folks in the needs that they have. The second is the state hasn't helped us here. The state has not given mental health funds at the level that we need. It hasn't provided spaces for folks who need treatments. And so I think that it's taken the city a while, because there's been a big headwind from the state, and also it's a big shift. And so I think that this is a very good idea, and I think we have been laying the groundwork for it for a while. I think we can go much further. We've seen Denver, for instance, put mental health specialists and substance abuse specialists alongside their police officers, so that actually folks responding to calls have a different skill set than just a police skill set. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the LIFT program, some of you know the purchase of the old hotel down on Capitol Ave during COVID, to be the front door for unsheltered folks to come in from the street and then begin their journey to being housed, was successful. It was a good program. We should be investing in more low barrier to entry spaces, because it allows folks to come in. So I think there are known programs here that we should continue to undertake. But I think, to your point, which is a very good one, we have to make sure that within our public safety sectors, we are training folks on recognizing mental health issues, recognizing domestic abuse, recognizing substance abuse, so that we make sure we have the right response And also having, as we hire back our police force, having specialists so that we actually can serve folks in the ways that they need to be served. And then a facility like this can actually then be part of that journey.
I think one of the reasons why it took the city so long to address this is that Health and Human Services is the responsibility of the county. But what we've realized, and COVID has put a real big, red mark over all of the pressure points and all the areas where we have lack, but we cannot afford to wait and say the county should take care of it and the city should just do policing. We've got to all have all hands on deck with this. And so I think the journey has been a long one, but I am glad that we have finally arrived where we are. I spent yesterday at my daughter's house because a homeless person has decided to set up a camp in front of her house. Why did they do that? Because as a former school teacher, she befriended him. He is schizophrenic, we believe. The police came, we called Grady, Pat came. Pat went away because this person was threatening them and they didn't want to put their staff at risk. The police officer said, my option is to arrest this person or to wait for Grady. 2 hours later, Grady still had not come. Why? They are understaffed. They don't have any beds. It was a real life example of good intentions, but operationally, we have a lot more to do to address the mental health challenges. The police officer said to me, standing on the corner yesterday, if we had a social worker in the car with us, we wouldn't send that social worker in because this person is threatening. He had a broom and a stick. And so safety of those folks who are in the mental health space is a top priority. Our law enforcement, he said, I want to help him, but I don't have all the tools that I need. We've got to unpack this for real. And we've got to know that when we have folks facing mental health crisis, we've got to have resources. We don't need to wait 2 hours. We don't need to find out that Grady doesn't have any room. We need to have stronger partnerships so that we can make sure that our communities are as safe as possible, and we need to work more with Fulton County to make sure that we're leveraging our resources. I'm glad that we are finally making a first step. Thank you.
It sounded like, and just want to follow up with that, with what you said about issues with the person being schizophrenic. Mm-hmm. You think there'd be a problem then with putting those in need in this facility?
See, that becomes the challenge. And so safety of our workers is important. Safety of those who are trying to protect us is important. And so it's a complex area. And I asked the officer, I said, can you make a determination of the kind of care that he needs? He says that I cannot. And so we need to either cross-train our officers, but we have to keep safety as a top priority, and those that are a danger to themselves or to others have to be triaged in a way that is different and make sure everyone is safe.
All right, last of the 2-minute questions. What's your plan for equitable distribution of resources across the city? For example, Anderson Park, we talked about this a little bit, and Center Hill Park in Northwest Atlanta have had deferred maintenance. We know that for years. But there are new parks being built, established, West Side Park being one of them. What would you do to help that situation? Let's start with you, Ms. Archibald.
The word of, I guess maybe this last couple of years has been equity. And I think we can look at equity in education, we can look at equity across a number of different spectrums, but I do think when it comes to the delivery of city services, when it comes to how we allocate those services, I do think equity has to be a dynamic of how we make sure that we all get what we need. And so I think that's an example of what we don't want to have. Every community deserves to have great parks. And as we look around our city, I think it's important to do an asset map and looking at not only parks, but looking at other allocation of resources, making sure that sidewalks, that we have safe sidewalks everywhere and not just somewhere. And so I think we have to use this as a moment to pivot and to make sure that we are ensuring that every part of this city feels valued. And so I'm excited about the possibilities of us re-examining how we allocate those dollars. When it comes to parks and recreation authorities, parks and our recreation centers, let me say that, this is an important part of our helping students be successful. We work with APS with after-school programs, and often those happen at our parks. And so we want to make sure that all of our parks are complementary to not only the educational and social needs of community, but that they are attractive and that they are safe. And so I'm just excited about this next term and the opportunity to allocate resources from a dynamic and a space of equity and taking care of all of our city. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Shipman.
So I think the first thing we have to do is to actually execute the things we already have. We have seen, I was just talking to a housing nonprofit leader today, and they said they are no longer working with the city on rental assistance coming out of COVID because the city's been too hard to work with. They're working with folks in Cobb and with folks in other counties, but they've stopped. Many of the HIV and AIDS nonprofits in this city are no longer working with the city on the HOPWA program, the Housing for People with AIDS program, because the money has been stuck at the city for years. We had to send workforce development dollars that could help people get better jobs, back to the federal government because we couldn't spend it. So the first thing we have to do is to make sure when we have money that we're actually spending that money, because a lot of that money would be addressing equity issues. The second is, I think we have to have a consistent view to where money is going, what maintenance schedules look like. I think we should have a scorecard that everyone in the city can see. When was the last time that parks were maintained or not maintained? How much money has gone to every council district by every program, so that folks can actually understand how money is flowing. I had an event in Adair Park and somebody said, how am I going to know if you're actually making any difference? I said, you'll see the money flow differently if I'm able to make a difference when it comes to equity issues, because it comes down at the end of the day to where we're actually putting our attention and our resources. And then finally, I'd say that part of the distrust that you talked about earlier is that the private sector, look, Atlanta has a great history of public-private partnerships to do incredible things. But when the private sector and the philanthropic sector sees the city not able to spend money it gets from the federal government, it also doesn't want to give money to the city for expansions of parks or for special projects or opening up community centers. So I also think we have to really work on getting better at execution so that we can also get other kinds of money to address these issues of equity and make sure that everything from parks to housing to infrastructure are actually being invested in across the entire city.
All right, we are now in the 1 minute. 1 minute questions. So let's talk about our election cycle that we've just seen. A lot of incumbencies being challenged. Some believe that residents want a change of the old guard. With that said, do you think that we need to start seeing term limits for council members? And please explain in detail why and why not. We'll begin with you, Mr. Shipman.
So it's not actually something I've decided on, but I think that looking at the possibility is a good exercise. Look, there is a clear distinction between having someone who knows a district for a long time and having fresh ideas, and there's arguments about term limits at all levels. But I think what people have told me that they really want is they really want things to work better. And someone who can make things work better is who they actually want in office. And so I think the exercise of going through term limit conversation may be helpful, but I think making sure that we understand that what are the expectations of everybody who's in city government, and how do we know if they're being effective, and how do we have mechanisms by which the neighborhoods and citizens can actually then be heard and folks can be.
Ms. Archibald.
I think every 4 years is a term limit. You either get reelected or you don't run, but every 4 years, the citizens of Atlanta have an opportunity to say yes or to no to a candidate running for office. So I think there's a built-in mechanism that says if you aren't being responsive, then we're going to elect someone else. I also know that what I do in my office and what I've done for 20 years, I always surround myself with innovative people. I always surround myself with young people. My office is a space where we vet ideas and we listen to our constituents and then we execute. And check out Council District 5. We have had a lot of innovative ideas. Memorial Drive has changed because of the innovation that came from a neighbor who said, what about Memorial Drive being more walkable? We have $1 million in sidewalk improvements immediately as a result of that. So innovation and accountability can happen every day and at least every 4 years. Thank you.
So it sounds like you both don't want to come up with a term limit at this point right now. Is that correct?
I would have to think about it. I'm not sure that's the answer.
Ms. Archibong?
Every 4 years, we're up for re-election.
But it's not really a term limit. It's not really a term limit. And we need to know, name recognition means a lot.
I think that the inherent built-in safety net in our system is that you don't get to have a lifetime appointment. We're not Supreme Court justices. Every 4 years, you've got to earn the right to come back. That's a built-in limit, and I think it's strong enough. How about that?
There, you gave me the end of it. Okay, thank you. All right, our second question. Atlanta, the home of the civil rights movement, but still dotted with memorials of Confederacy, ranging from street names to statues. Even though we're seeing changes in places like Grady High School, it's now Midtown High. What's your opinion about these memorials? Should they be kept, removed, or modified? Ms. Archibong.
The Confederate memorials need to be removed. Where else in this country do losers get to memorialize and herald themselves in the way that the Confederacy has continued to be, I don't want to say dominate, but it's been a part of our narrative and our conversation. It's been very painful and ugly. And this is a 1-minute question?
Yes.
So that's my answer.
Okay, Mr. Shipman.
I agree that memorials and street names should be removed. I also believe that process should be one of educating people about who those folks were, about the real history, and about how those memorials came about. Because often those memorials didn't go up in 1867. They went up in 1914, or they went up in 1956, right after Brown versus Board of Education. So I think there is an opportunity not only to remove them, but to use that process as a way to help people understand the actual history of why they were put up and how that actually makes us think differently about our own past. I'm a history guy. I've spent 10 years doing history, and I think the process of going through that effort would be incredibly important so that folks understand how we got to where we were and hopefully have a different view about what we should do in the future.
I think that's the news media, because when we end up bringing these down, we end up telling everybody who they're named after and why they were up. So, all right, one issue in this race that's not receiving a lot of attention. What's one issue in this race that's not receiving a lot of attention? And what would you do as council president to address your concern? So pick an issue that's not receiving a lot of attention. Mr. Shipman, we begin with you.
I think one of the most important things that drives or does not drive policy in this city is our regional relationships. Relationships with the counties, relationships with the region, not just with the state. We talk a lot about the state relationship, but a lot happens look at the COVID relief dollars. Dollars flowed to counties, dollars flowed to cities, and there hasn't been a lot of coordination around who's going to do what and everybody and where it's going to go and really getting maximum benefit. So I think as council president, I would spend a lot of my time building those relationships before we needed them, before a crisis, making sure to understand what the counties were dealing with, what were the priorities of different commissioners, spending time at the ARC, because I think that will help the city not only in making policy, but it will also in these special situations where infrastructure dollars are another good example. Our ability as a region to deploy those infrastructure dollars that are coming from the federal government are going to depend on our ability to work as a region, because transit is not something you solve in one jurisdiction. And so I think it hasn't received enough attention relative to how important it is.
All right. Ms. Archibong.
I think that there's several, but one, I wish we spent more time talking about the changes in our voting laws As I talk to people, there's so much concern, particularly among our elderly. We had Secretary of State Raffensperger spontaneously sending out absentee ballot opportunities, and now we don't have that. We don't have the ability to, they don't have the ability to get as much assistance as they used to have. I wish we spent more time talking to the electorate about how they can do their duty in terms of exercising the franchise. The new voting laws are quite complex, and we need to follow them carefully, or we will wind up with a situation unwittingly where the state could come over and take over our election boards here in the city. And so I just wish that we had spent, and I do spend a lot of time with the folks that I talk to, but we should have done a more comprehensive, better job talking about that.
All right, here's a question that was posed to the mayoral candidates on Monday. What one Atlanta issue keeps you up at night? And what would you do, what policies would you work on to enact to make a better night's sleep for yourself?
Me, I'm first?
Yes, we're going to begin with you.
Okay, thank you. You know, for pre-COVID, for 18 years in a row, I held what I call FUSS, Focus Upon Senior Services, and we spent a lot of time helping seniors make sure they had all of their homestead exemptions and that they were getting all of the discounts and benefits to help them have dignity and have a comfortable life. It keeps me up at night, the seniors that are calling me now saying that their tax bills have tripled, but their Social Security is not. It keeps me up at night that they are scared. Do I eat or do I try to pay this bill? Will someone take my house from me? When a predatory investor comes by and gives them a card and says information that is confusing to them, it keeps me up at night that our legacy families feel left behind and they don't have enough resources. We need to do more working at the state to get more freezing of assessments, changing our tax formula to help our families who have been here for years. Our legacy families deserve to live here with dignity. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Shipman.
What keeps me up at night is what voters say is keeping them up at night. I was at a home, southwest Atlanta. Mom said, I don't let my college-age daughter go get gas. I was at a home in Sherwood Forest, and a mom said, I don't let my college-age daughter go and get gas. I was in Grant Park, and a mom said, I don't go and get gas. The perception and the fear around public safety across the entire city is something we have to address. Because when people don't feel as if they can move in their community or another part of this city, it hurts safety, it hurts our economy, it hurts our national perception. How many stories have we read about on the national stage? I was talking to hotel general managers the other day, and they said public safety is affecting our ability to bring conferences to Atlanta. We have to address this issue, and we have to address it in a way that people feel safer, because only when people feel safer will the city be safer.
All right, and as the density of the city actually continues to increase, more people moving here, we notice that we have some challenges when it comes to public transportation. What would you do to enact some sustainable transportation plans?
Sorry, that's the last part of the question.
A sustainable transportation plan.
So we have, in 2016, passed a T-SPLOS that said we were going to invest in transit. We really haven't been able to get that out the door. So the first thing is, I think we have to very quickly in the new administration review the plans that are on the table and then start to execute, because people are losing faith in our ability to execute. Number two, I think transit on the Beltline is vital. And the reason is because the Beltline is going to get finished, and it touches all parts of this city. But if we don't have transit on it, we miss a huge opportunity for affordability. Because the Beltline is the one place in this city where within a very short radius with transit, you can shop, you can work, you can play. You could literally be carless. But if we don't invest in transit, we will lose the opportunity to build affordability. And I think that it would also show folks what the future of Atlanta could be like, because a lot of folks don't trust that we can actually build a transit corridor. And so I think that it's both making sure we get the dollars in the ground that we have, and also being very clear that that project is actually going to show what the future of transit can look like to people's lives in this city.
All right, Ms. Archibong, your vision for a sustainable transportation plan.
I think MARTA has to be at the core because that is our public transit entity, and I think we need to first and foremost make sure that the transit dependent and that our busiest corridors get the services that they deserve. Hamilton Road is the biggest, highest ridership in the city. We need to make sure that we are prioritizing where the greatest need is. Secondly, as we have on our agenda next Monday, nominees to be on the MARTA board that are coming from the mayor's office. We need to make sure that nominees to the MARTA board reflect the vision and need and commitment to really be reflective of what is needed from citizens. Not somebody who's a friend of the elected official, but someone who really gets transit and really wants to make sure that our citizens have safe, efficient transit. We need to make sure that MARTA is getting people to where they need to get to, be it in job, school, places of entertainment, but we need MARTA to be a stronger partner, and we need to help MARTA do that through the board members that we select. Thank you.
All right, we've moved into the 30-second questions, and we want to learn a little bit more about you all. Okay? So this is quick. Talk fast.
I love it.
You love it? Yep. All right, let's see if you love it. You know, we all need somewhere to get away sometimes, and for city officials, elected officials, public officials, you need to take a moment to get away from the daily grind. Want to know from you, we'll start with you, Ms. Archibong, where do you go when you need to take a break from your daily grind?
I enjoy reading a good book or looking at some, spoiler alert, I love British comedy. So for me, you know, I have my mom with me. She's in her 90s, and so and my dog has kidney failure, so he's in phase 1 renal failure, and so being at home with folks that I love and doing things that I enjoy, it's enough for me. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Shipman.
Well, if my 9- and 7-year-old daughters don't grab all of that time, you will find me running on Freedom Trail or the Beltline or another part of the city. I find a long run to be a great way to see the city, especially early in the morning if you get a sunrise. But it's also just a great way to sort of clear your head, do something that is that just allows you to sort of reconnect with being a person and not think about all the issues that you could be thinking about.
All right. Final question, Mr. Shipman. This one starts with you. If you are elected city council president, what would you want your legacy to be?
I think it's not about my legacy, but I think it is making sure that we do not lose another generation to poverty. That we would look back 20 years from now and say, the poverty rate went down, which really meant that thousands and tens of thousands of people were able to build the life that they wanted for their kids and that they wanted for themselves. That, to me, would be worth all of the effort.
All right, Ms. Archibong.
I would want, and I do want my legacy to be that I kept the promises that I made. To be entrusted with the office to serve the citizens has been very, very important to me, that my constituents know that I care about them and that they will know that my legacy was that I listened to them, and I cared about them, and I did my best to serve them and to be responsive to those needs that were brought to my attention. Thank you.
All right, our goal has been to let people get an idea of you, the issues, hear from you all. We're going to now have closing statements. So, Ms. Archibong, you have the first statement.
Now, how long is this?
1 minute.
I had some time left over from another question. No. Listen, I want to thank the League of Women Voters, ACLU of Georgia, and those who are here today, and those who are watching us online. I'm Madeline Archibong, and I am running to be the council president who will change the narrative. They say that we have a equal branch of government. The citizens of Atlanta deserve to have a council that is accountable. What does that mean? That we are doing our accountability, we are verifying the accuracy of the information that we're getting from the administration, that we're holding our commissioners accountable, and most importantly, that we are listening to you. We don't need a weak council and a strong mayor. You deserve a strong mayor and a strong council. I can provide that. As a 20-year veteran, I know this council, and I know how to be independent and to serve. If you want an Atlanta that is safe and a city council that is strong, vote for Nadalyn Archibong. Thank you.
25 years ago, the Olympics ended, and we had dreams about what this city would be. And the city is so much bigger, and in some ways it's better than it was 25 years ago. But as I've campaigned across thousands and thousands of conversations, I have heard people losing their faith in our future. I've heard them doubting whether or not this city is simply going to grow bigger or if it's actually going to grow in a way that we can be proud of. I'm running for city council president because I want to help restore that faith by bringing people together, by bringing them into the process, and by actually having the city work differently. The way we are headed is simply a bigger version of what we have. We have the opportunity in this election to turn the page, to head in a fresh direction. I'm Doug Shipman. I want to be city council president because I believe that we need to go in a better future. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Shipman, Ms. Archibong, thank you so much, and we appreciate everyone. Let's get our closing remarks.
Let's give a round of applause for our candidates. And a round of applause for our moderator. My name is John Moy. I'm the Director of Policy for the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. And on behalf of our partners, the League of Women Voters, the ACLU, Protect the Vote, Black Votes Matter. Yes. And did I miss one? And the fraternities and sororities. We want to thank you all so much for coming out tonight. You know, we believe at the Urban League of Atlanta, and our president is here, Nancy Flake Johnson, that an educated voter is the best citizen. That an educated voter is the best citizen. And so it's up to us as organizations to bring it to you, the people, and so that you can make an informative choice. I also want to thank the candidates, because it's tough. Public service is tough. There's nothing grandiose about it. It's a noble profession, but it's a tremendous amount of sacrifice, and we want to thank you all for the work that you do and for getting out there and putting your name out. So just a couple of quick points before we go for the night. I just want to share with you that the League of Women Voters will be hosting virtual forums starting Monday. Thank you, Madam President. And then on November 17th, early voting begins. On November 19th is the last day, I believe, to request an absentee ballot. And on November 24th is the last day for early voting. And then just as a reminder that on November 30th, we're actually voting in person. And there are runoffs in District 1, District 3, District 4, District 5, District 12, and Post 3 at large are all in runoffs. And don't forget to pay attention to redistricting. Ms. Johnson and I have been at the state capitol this week. It's a very tough process, so I think all of our people should be involved. On behalf of the Urban League, thank you all so much for coming. Good night.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Have a great night. You can mingle, meet, talk right now. Have a couple minutes to enjoy. More boxes of charcuterie as well.